I've battled weight issues all my life, and I was always looking for ways to lose weight fast. Over the years, I tried all the diets, the different meal plans, and the quick weight loss tips, but none of them really worked long term. Eventually, I realized that weight loss, or more specifically fat loss, doesn't need to be that complicated. It's actually really very simple, but that doesn't mean that it's easy. So in this video, I'm going to go over two things that I started to focus on, two things that I still use today. These two things became the foundation for my fat loss, and they also help change the way I think about food. First, cut back on portions. If your weight is going up, then most likely you're eating too much, even though it might not feel like it. Now, that's a very simple concept, but something that I really needed to drill into my brain. I was eating way more food than I needed and way more than I was burning. So when I really started looking at the amount of food that I was actually eating, I had to ask myself, is this a reasonable amount of food to eat or is it excessive? And for me, it was definitely excessive. I remember the first time this really hit me. I went out to dinner with a friend of mine, and we both sat down, had an appetizer, a heavy meal, a dessert, and we ate so fast. And a week later, I went out to dinner with another friend of mine who just ordered an entree, took his time eating it, and also left some food on his plate. The difference between the two of them was huge, but it really opened my eyes and made me start thinking about my portions. So what I started to do was become aware of how much food was I putting on my plate. Also, was I going back for seconds? And if so, was I just having a little bit or was I loading up again? And also, how frequently was I eating throughout the day? So what did I do to start changing this? Well, the first thing was I started cutting my portions. I literally was putting less food on my plate. And if I went out to dinner or did takeout, I would just cut the portion immediately or leave some on my plate. The key here is to just start cutting back and take in less food. And just by doing that, even if I was eating the same types of food, I was already starting to eat less. I also started using something I called space on the plate, where I would make sure that I could visually see sections of my plate when the food was on it, as opposed to before when I would just pile the food on top and it would go edge to edge. And again, if I'm putting less on my plate, even if I go back for more, I'm still eating less food than I was before overall. Plus, I started to slow down. I used to eat so fast. Now, I take my time, I put the fork down between bites and really take time to enjoy and taste my food. By taking my time, I find that I end up eating less food because I feel fuller sooner. Also, because I've slowed down, I'm feeling much more satisfied with my food and I have less of a desire to eat more. So this has all made me realize that I don't need a huge pile of food to feel satisfied. One additional thing that did help me was I started to learn about calories and portion sizes, and that helped me get a better understanding of how much food I'm taking in and maybe how much my body needs. But you don't need to start with that. I didn't do that right away. Initially, I just started cutting back portions and eating less. The second thing I focused on was to start fixing my habits. I realized that there were very specific things that I was doing on a regular basis, certain habits and behaviors that were causing me to gain fat and keeping me stuck. Your habits, whatever they are, will give you a result, but my habits were not giving me the result that I wanted. They were causing me to gain weight, to get fatter. So the second focus became creating better habits, habits that moved me away from gaining fat toward losing fat. And in order to do that, I first needed to identify what were the habits that were working against me. So I needed to really take a look at my exercise and diet habits. Now in this video, we're focusing on the food aspect of it, the diet portion, but if you want more information on how to get more active, I have videos on my channel for that. So I started really paying attention to my eating patterns. Being aware of this is really important. So start paying attention to what you're eating, when you're eating it, and how much. And do it without judgment. And to do this, you can start asking yourself some questions such as, are your meals too big? And if they are, try to find ways to cut the portions or to substitute things with lower calories. Are you snacking on high-calorie foods? And if so, can you replace them with something that's lower calorie or a healthier option, or eliminate the snacking altogether? Are you visiting fast food restaurants too frequently? If so, how can you cut back? Are there too many tempting foods in your house? If so, can you remove them from the house or just make them less accessible? Are you doing too much takeout or going out to restaurants too often? Well, can you cook more at home? Or when you do cook, cook a little bit extra so that you have leftovers for other meals. Are weekends destroying the progress that you're making during the week? And if they are, how do you find balance where you could still enjoy the weekend without derailing your progress? Are you drinking too much alcohol? If so, where can you cut back? These are just examples. The important thing is for you to identify your problem areas and then to figure out what small steps that you can take to start addressing those issues. Some of the issues that I had were things like my meals during the day were fine, but the portion sizes for my dinners were always too big. I was always having issues with nighttime snacking, and that would always end up adding a few hundred calories to my day. Weekends a lot of times were derailing my progress. I would generally eat well during the week, but the weekend I would end up blowing it. And another problem I had on the weekends was a lot of times if I had a big indulgent meal, it generally would turn into a multi-day binge. And finally, one other issue that was making things worse was the types of food that I was eating. Most of the time, I was not making the best choices. I was eating a lot of fatty foods, processed foods, sugary foods, and doing a lot of takeout. So these were my big issues that I needed to work on turning around. So the changes I made were things like I started eating smaller portions, which we already discussed. I needed to find better ways to balance my weekend eating so that I could still enjoy myself but not have it turn into a big binge. And I actually have a video on how to control your weekend eating. I will link that in the description below if you want some more information. Also, after a big meal, I tried to get back on track sooner so that the excessive eating would not continue. I took all the tempting foods and snacks out of the house and I replaced them with lower calorie, healthier options. So this way, if I still wanted a snack, I could have something. I slowly started to make better food choices, and when you're making healthier food choices, you might not need to cut your portions as much because the healthier options might have less calories. And one of the things that helped me was I started to learn a little bit more about food, like calories and macronutrients, and having that information helped me make better choices when I was choosing what to eat. And if you want more information on macronutrients, I have a video on that. I will put a link in the description below. And I also started to find some simple, easy recipes and try to cook more at home. The important point here is that you want to figure out what are your biggest weaknesses and then start working on turning them around over time. Now, these changes don't have to happen all at once. The things that I worked on took time. You start with some small, simple changes and work on them over a period of time and then build from there. So if you want to start losing weight, or more specifically fat, just start doing these two things. Eat less and start working on creating better habits that move you away from fat gain and more toward fat loss. And I just want to mention that these two things are not something that you just do once and forget about. These are my core principles that I focus on even today, and I use as an overall guide as I lose weight. So I'm continually checking in on them and tweaking them as I go. Now, this isn't a quick fix. It's a process. It takes time. But this is something that you can actually stick to. And if you can stick to it, you can make lasting results. And that's pretty much it. Simple, right? Well, simple in concept, but not easy to do. But it's an excellent place to start. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like what I had to say, click the like button, subscribe, remember to stay active, and I'll see you in the next video.